What is up, guys? My name is Chase, and today we are going to be talking about Avenged Sevenfold's latest album, Life is But a Dream. So right off the bat, I should mention that I am in no way like a music professional. I just kind of casually listen to music and, I like what I like. So take that as you will. But I just wanted to talk about this album because I feel like there is a lot to digest. I don't know if you would even call this a review, but I just kind of want to talk about this album, just kind of like chat what I think about it. So first off, let me just give you the sort of TLDR, the summary of what I think about this album. I think that this does not feel like an Avenged Sevenfold album, while also feeling like an Avenged Sevenfold album. If you do go into it with an open mind, like as much as you can, I think there are some really cool stuff that you can enjoy with this album. If you're expecting another Waking the Fallen, another City of Evil, like you're not gonna get that. That's pretty much the biggest sort of disclaimer that you can say about this album. It is not your traditional Avenged Sevenfold album, which I think can either be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you view it. So that's the TLDR. Now we can kind of dig into all of the nitty gritty. Let's start off with my background with Avenged Sevenfold because maybe this will give you a better idea of where I'm coming from. The very first time I was exposed to Avenged Sevenfold was with Beast and the Harlot in Guitar Hero 2. I thought it was a really cool and interesting track. The intro of Beast and the Harlot always reminded me of almost like wedding type of music or like funeral type of music. But that was the very first time I heard a single Avenged Sevenfold song. After that, I didn't really get too deep into Avenged Sevenfold until their album Nightmare came out. That was the first time I listened to an Avenged Sevenfold album in full. So it was also the first Avenged Sevenfold album that I listened to when it was brand new. After listening to Nightmare, obviously I went back in their whole discography. I listened to the White Album, City of Evil, Waking the Fallen. Not gonna lie, I never could really get into sounding the seventh trumpet. But anyway, after that, I was closely following Avenged Sevenfold. I have a vivid memory of actually being in the movie theater watching Maleficent when they dropped a trailer for the song Hail to the King. So I was that idiot in the movie theater with my phone holding it up to my ear trying to be as quiet as possible. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I was a pretty big Avenged Sevenfold fan after Nightmare, and I've been following all of their releases ever since. So earlier in 2023, Avenged Sevenfold did this whole ARG where people were scouting out different websites. They were going to real life places and the band would leave little notes here and there. It was a really crazy time. I was following the Discord the whole time, and I think it's super awesome how that whole community was able to get together to try to solve all of these riddles. It was also a pretty stressful week just because I was constantly trying to check the Discord for new updates. But anyway, it all led up to the release of their newest single called Nobody. And I am not going to lie, to this day, I'm not the biggest fan of Nobody. And I guess that's where we'll start with kind of digesting these tracks on this album. Because according to the band themselves, Nobody kind of encompasses the whole album. It's sort of the root and the soul of this whole album, which to a certain point I understand. I really wanted to understand this song, and I think that's honestly how a lot of this album is you have to actually put in the mental work to sort of understand the songs on this album. And I think with Nobody, what's really cool is that it is a very untraditional type of song. It's definitely not your average pop song or anything in terms of the structure. Nobody kind of just takes you on a bunch of twists and turns. There's this random part in the middle of the song where it turns into Bohemian Rhapsody, and in that aspect I do think it's really cool. For me, where Nobody kind of lacks is with the actual guitar. They refer to the main guitar part as a riff, which is just this bendy wow. That's the best way I can explain it. I don't know, something about that, the simplicity of it is a bit too simple for me, and the fact that it repeats so much, it gets really repetitive. And I'm not trying to hate on the song or the band. I think it's just it's not something that really sort of interests me, I guess. It was also a very interesting first single for the band to put out, especially after 7 years since their last album, The Stage. But there are other songs on this album that I think would have made a better first single, one of which is the first track, which I guess we'll go to now, Game Over. People have been describing this as Avenged Sevenfold mixed with System of a Down, and I totally agree that it definitely has the vibes of System of a Down, especially a song like Chop Suey, where the verses are just M Shadows just spitting out words left and right. It has a lot of punk vibes, which is very interesting to hear from Avenged Avenged Sevenfold in 2023. Not to say that Avenged Sevenfold has completely like ditched their punk style, like it still exists in some of their music ever since, their early beginnings. But for me, the guitar riff in the verses of Game Over feels like something like straight off of Sounding the Seventh Trumpet or something. Like it really, really feels like they're sort of punk grassroots. With Game Over, you also sort of get that introduction to a lot of the themes that carry on throughout the album, one of which includes very jarring changes in the musical style. As we just talked about, you have this really fast punk riff, and then it just randomly turns into like acoustic guitars and really slow. And then the guitars come back in and there's M Shadow screaming in the background. And then it goes back to being a really soft and like almost pretty sounding acoustic guitar. So that is a theme that I feel like continues on throughout a lot of the songs in Life is But a Dream. And whether or not that is for you, I think, can vary between different people. For me, I guess maybe since System of a Down was the first band I was ever introduced to in my entire life, like since I was 9 years old, maybe I have just become accustomed to really jarring changes in music, especially, with System of a Down style. But for me, I kind of got used to it the more I listened to this album. Although I can understand the people who do say that they wish that there were more transitions between like verses and choruses and whatnot. But hey, I think it makes it very interesting. It gives kind of like a proggy or like experimental type of vibe. So I think it's interesting. It's very different. Then after Game Over, we move on to a very standout track from this album, Mattel. This one is a really like fun, sort of just aggressive, pretty close to classic Avenged Sevenfold, like City of Evil type of stuff. This song also being the second track on the album, we quickly learn that M Shadows is still doing screaming, and I'm here for it. Mattel also introduces us to another sort of common theme in this album, which is a lot of experimental instruments. The first guitar solo in this song sounds like a keytar. And I don't know if they used a keytar to record it or what, but it's like this electronic sounding guitar solo, which is very different and interesting to hear in an Avenged Sevenfold song. I think M Shadows does a really good job with his delivery of the vocals in this song. The chorus, while being like a very like jarring change from the rest of the song, it becomes really catchy. Like that's one of the main catchy parts from this whole album for me was the choruses. So yeah, I think Mattel is like one of the standout songs on this record. And that leads into Nobody, which we talked about already. And then Nobody leads into We Love You, which was also the second single that they released from this album. I was really shocked to find out that people are not big fans of We Love You. For me, We Love You was the track where when I first heard it, it like all made sense to me. Like it was like, this is super duper unique and interesting, at least in comparison to when they first released Nobody as the first single. When I first heard We Love You, like I was just like super into it. Like I was like, this is the song. Like this is a gosh darn good song. And similar to both Game Over and Mattel, We Love You, I think, has the most jarring changes in music style throughout the song. Like listening to the verses where it's this very almost dance or hip hop feeling type of chanting, you wouldn't think that would exist in the same song as this like really crazy screaming part in the middle. And I just think that's like brilliant. Like I think that's really, really cool. And then not only that, but the end of the song goes into this like really beautiful slide guitar solo with an acoustic guitar in the back. It's a really like wild ride, but like I'm here for it. Like I really, really dug it the first time I listened to it. So after We Love You, we move on to Cosmic, which I know is a lot of people's standout song on this album. And I would totally have to agree. This is a really, really great song off of this album. This I would consider to be the ballad of this record. On previous Avenged Sevenfold albums, we've gotten songs like So Far Away from Nightmare, Seize the Day from City of Evil. I think Cosmic lives up to that sort of like ballady type of song on an Avenged Sevenfold record. I mean, where do I even start with Cosmic? It starts off like very soft and like, very ballady. And then Sinister Gates busts out this like epic guitar solo, like straight out of Freebird. And then after you get this like ear-melting guitar solo, it goes into this like really beautiful piano, once again like a ballad type of thing. I've seen a lot of people comparing it to the song Acid Rain off of Hail to the King. And then as if this song didn't like kick your butt enough, you get this like really epic, just feel good almost. I don't know, I can't think of any other word besides like epic. It's just like this epic outro. It kind of reminds me of the song Higher off of their last album, The Stage. But yeah, it's just this like grooving, just like epic outro for a song. We also get more of that like experimental stuff with, I'm guessing they did vocoder vocals for the ending, but basically like a robot sound, I guess. Yeah, Cosmic is a trip. Like it's a really, really just crazy ballad. After Cosmic, we move on to Beautiful Morning. Beautiful Morning, I think, is probably the most Avenged Sevenfold sounding song off of this album. Like for me, I think Beautiful Morning could have fit somewhere on like the stage, or I don't know, maybe even like City of Evil or Nightmare. And by that, I mean that it's a pretty just like straightforward song. Like it is mainly just like guitars, and the ending has this really melancholy feeling piano riff. I also think Beautiful Morning was the song that took me the longest to sort of get used to off of this album, just because instead of really jarring musical style changes like the previous songs we've talked about, this one has really jarring like musical timing changes. And once again, I'm not like a music professional, so I don't know exactly the terms here, but basically the timings between the intro riff to the verses to the pre-chorus, they're like very different. And as like a guitar player myself, that took me a bit of a while to get used to, like trying to figure out what the guitar was playing and in what rhythm. But besides that, I mean, I don't know, I like the ending to Beautiful Morning. For some reason, M Shadow saying "Don't Let It Be" over and over, I don't know, that really stood out to me. And like the piano riff once again is very like melancholy and almost like creepy feeling. But after Beautiful Morning, we move on to Easier, which, oh my goodness, can I give you guys a history lesson with the song Easier? I forget exactly when it was, but maybe like 1 or 2 years ago, this random channel on YouTube leaked this unreleased Avenged Sevenfold song. It was an untitled demo that people started calling It's Easier. And I think the general consensus among fans was that this was probably recorded either between City of Evil or the White Album or the self-titled album. And then, oh my goodness, again, the actual lyrics from the demo It's Easier are in this song Easier. Like that was so crazy that there was this demo from who knows how many years ago that they now incorporated into their latest album. But anyway, Easier, I don't know, I think it's once again the closest feeling to a traditional Avenged Sevenfold song, at least in terms of the main riff. It's this really like chuggy, like slow, just like grooving. But then there's also like this, I don't even know what you would call it, like an, I don't know, is it jazz? I don't know, like music genres, I'm sorry. But like the choruses and the ending of the song have this really just like clean guitar tones, like jazzy guitar solo, like it's really like different. Oh yeah, and then I also have to talk about the little pew-pews in the middle of the song. The first time I was doing my full listen through of this album, I was actually like laughing out loud when I was just hearing like random pew-pews in the background, like that was so funny. But then we move on to the G.O.D. trilogy, another little history or fun fact lesson for everyone. The idea behind G.O.D. is that I believe it was M Shadows who said that they were inspired by Travis Scott's Sicko Mode, which goes through a bunch of different music styles in one song pretty jarringly. I'm using the word jarring a lot, I'm sorry. But that's sort of the idea behind G.O.D. is that you're supposed to listen to it in like a trilogy, and they're like completely different feeling songs that all tie into like a single mega song, I guess if you want to call it. Which first off, I think it's hilarious that Avenged Sevenfold now has a song that is just titled G. Like, I don't know, I think that's just so funny to me to think about someone who's like, hey, what's your favorite Avenged Sevenfold song? And then the other person's just like, G. But anyway, G sounds like something straight out of Persona. That's like the best way I've been describing it to people, which I believe uses jazz. I don't know. Once again, I'm not a music professional, but G does a lot of interesting things in that they actually have like other vocals coming in. There's like a female vocal during the pre-choruses. Oh, there's also like the spoken word part at the end of the song. I always have a little chuckle when it goes delete. And then, of course, When Robot. That leads us into Ordinary, which I think is the most out there song on this entire album, just in that it is nothing like any of Avenged Sevenfold's previous work. People have been describing it as a mashup between Avenged Sevenfold and Daft Punk. It's got like a disco vibe almost to it. M Shadows uses this really heavy auto-tune in the beginning, which is like really interesting and kind of weird to listen to at first. Then you have like the robot vocals coming in, which I mean makes sense since the idea behind Ordinary is that it's like a robot sort of having inner thoughts. Not gonna lie, my biggest gripe with Ordinary is the ending when there's like a car sound coming in at the end and it just becomes like extremely loud. That's not my favorite thing in music, when like there's just like these random sounds that just come in towards the end and just become like increasingly loud. Like I feel like I'm like having a migraine or something. But once again, that's just me. I'm not trying to like hate on this album or anything. I'm just personally not the big fan of when music does that. And then that leads us into Death. And another little history lesson slash fun fact. Right before Jimmy the Rev Sullivan passed away, he wrote the song Fiction, which was off of the album Nightmare. And if I'm not mistaken, Fiction had the demo title of Death, which was from the Rev. So I don't know, I just thought it was like really interesting that now we're here where there's an actual track from Avenged Sevenfold just called Death. But anyway, the actual song off of Life is But a Dream has a lot of Frank Sinatra vibes. There's a lot of orchestra in the song. I don't know, it honestly sounds very beautiful in like a very sad way because obviously this song is about death, but I think M Shadows does a really good job at he's like a vocal chameleon on this album. He does a lot of really different vocal styles. And with Death, it feels just very emotional and like impactful, which I think is really cool. It really like serves the song with the big orchestra in the background. Although once again, Death is another one of these songs where there's just like loudness that comes up during the end, this time from the actual orchestra, which I think is kind of like fun because it adds this really like scary, like creepy feeling to the ending, but also it's like, ow, my ears, you know? Although I'm not the biggest fan of it, I totally respect them that was their vision. That's what they wanted to do. And then finally, we end off with Life is But a Dream, which is just a piano track recorded by Sinister Gates. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest fan of like piano instrumentals. I blame it on the fact that I have a really short attention span. Like I get distracted very easily and like I can't really like remember much from just a piano playing. But I mean, it's like a very like haunting, just like chilling feeling piano track, which I think is really cool. It's a really interesting way to sort of bring this album to a close and bring everything together. You go from the chaotic orchestra in Death straight into this like really just single piano. It's a really like interesting 180 turn. But yeah, those are all the tracks on Life is But a Dream by Avenged Sevenfold. Once again, I am no music professional by any means, and I don't really mean for this to be a review video just because once again, I am not qualified enough, I think, to give a review of any kind of music. But if I were to give Life is But a Dream a rating, I would probably go with a solid 7 out of 10, maybe even a 7.5 out of 10. Once again, this is an album where you really have to go into it open-minded. You can't go in expecting another City of Evil or another Nightmare or even another Hell to the King. This is just like very just strange, weird, and just kind of out there, while also still having like sprinkles of classic Avenged Sevenfold. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like it is an album that offers so much variety. Like I almost feel like no matter what type of music you're into, there's probably at least 30 seconds from this album that will sound good to you. You know, if you want the screaming stuff, there's some screams in Mattel and We Love You. If you want the really slow, like sludgy feeling stuff, the verses in Easier have that really like sludgy feeling guitar riff. Heck, if you even want some like techno music, there's some stuff in Ordinary. Like there is a lot of moving parts in this album, which I totally give them a lot of props and respect for. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. It's been really fun trying to get used to this album. Like it almost feels like mental homework where I'm like, okay, we're gonna study up on the new Avenged Sevenfold album. We're gonna try to get used to what the heck they were thinking and what the heck they were doing in these songs. Like it's very interesting. I don't know. I just think it's a very unique, interesting, weird type of album. But let me know in the comments, what do you guys think of Avenged Sevenfold's Life is But a Dream? If you want to see my unboxing of the Mattel in Hell box, check out the video below. For now, thank you so much for watching. My name is Chase, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.